Did you know that space and microgravity provides a unique environment to conduct science experiments? In this video, I will share 4 cool experiments that were done by Axiom Space private astronauts on board International Space Station. And at the end of the video, I will give you my prediction, which of them is going to have the most impact back on Earth.
3, 2, 1.
Hi, my name is Pavel Rzhov. I'm a biotech scientist with a big passion for all things space. In this video, as I mentioned, I really want to go through a few experiments that were conducted by Axiom Space astronauts a few weeks ago on board International Space Station. So the first experiment that I wanted to talk about was using DNA-based nanomaterials for creating therapeutics. And the interesting thing about that, for me at least, was the fact that in space and microgravity, you are able to leverage the absence of gravity to create all kinds of funky shaped objects. And DNA nanomaterials have been generating a lot of buzz over the last several years. And in fact, because nanomaterials are so small, they can be leveraged to create all sorts of different unique shapes for different therapeutic purposes. For example, for therapeutic mRNA delivery or as an injectable scaffold for cartilage repair. So these are the 2 areas that astronauts were focusing on in terms of using these DNA nanomaterials. And in the absence of gravity, I think the possibilities are even more endless, if you will. And I think it has a lot of potential to create new science and new shapes for these types of materials. So second experiment, which was also quite interesting to me, has to do with stem cell research. Now, stem cells, as you know, are these cells that can be reprogrammed into different kinds of cells, whether it's your skin cells or stomach cells or brain cells or whatever. And the ability to reprogram them is something that scientists have been chasing for several decades, really. And microgravity allows us to really study that in a different light, because in the absence of gravity, you can really start seeing different patterns and different behaviors of cells and culture, and that's something you cannot really replicate back on Earth. The third experiment that was really interesting has to do with tissue regeneration. As you can imagine, repairing tissues is something that we have to deal with here on Earth quite often. So if you can engineer tissues for repair instead of waiting for a transplant, for example, in more severe cases, that could be a big advantage. And in the absence of gravity, you can create those tissues in a more free environment, if you will. They will be self-supporting because it's not going to collapse under its own weight as those cells and those tissues start to grow and expand. And that's, again, one of those unique things that you can only really achieve in the absence of gravity in lower Earth orbit. So in this case, what the astronauts have done, they've been looking to evaluate the vascularization of bioengineered liver and kidney tissues. Vascularization is obviously the generation of the blood vessels in the tissue. And in the microgravity, that can be accomplished much more easily than here on Earth. The last experiment that I wanted to talk about has to do with stem cell aging. Differently to cultivating stem cells, this particular experiment was focusing on evaluating how microgravity specifically affects specific enzymes in blood stem cells and their ability to create and cause mutations. As you can imagine, in the absence of gravity, our cells and our enzymes inside those cells can behave differently, and that can lead to rapid muscular degeneration, bone mass loss, but also lead to just accelerated aging overall. And this really manifests itself as those enzymes that would be repairing our DNA, for example. They might not be repairing DNA as efficiently as back here on Earth. And that was really the subject of that experiment, where astronauts were collecting their blood before, during, and after their space flight. And using that knowledge, we would really have a better understanding how the microgravity affects those enzymes and their ability to catch immune diseases or cancer in those different conditions in microgravity versus here on Earth. So in the end of the video, I really wanted to give my prediction which of those experiments is going to be the most impactful here on Earth. And in my opinion is this ability to generate and manufacture tissues in space and bring them back on Earth. If you can imagine not having to wait for a transplant, but instead manufacture it in space, because space again allows you to create structures that are not going to collapse under their own weight. So that area of research on space station is something I'm paying very close attention to, and I'm really looking forward to more developments from that corner of biotech and space biotech in particular. By the way, I didn't actually mention another cool scientific experiment that was done, and that has to do with cancer cell organoids. So if you want to check it out, you can click on the video that I've done before on that topic. Thank you for joining me in this episode, and I look forward to bringing you more interesting insights from space research and the impact that it has on life here on Earth. I'll see you in the next video. Bye-bye.